So we're talking about joyful anticipation, living in answered prayer. And Sandra and I have been having a fabulous conversation. So when I found out that Reverend David Howard is going to be your minister, I was like, yes, in celebration of all that is arriving. So joyful anticipation is that energy of when we plant that seed in prayer, that we're watering it with the sacred yes. I always want to reference our beloved master teacher, Jesus. It says in Matthew 7:7, when we talk about prayer, it says, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened. And then in Mark 11:24, therefore I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it and it will be yours. And what we understand about prayer, we're not begging, we're not beseeching. It's not like we're playing the lottery. We're actually aligning in consciousness, knowing that that spiritual reality that we call God, that divine love, divine presence, is revealing in the prayer, which is the encoded answer already present. Think of it as the acorn seed. Everything that's necessary for that oak tree is in that seed. Everything. However, that seed's not going to grow unless we put it in soil, unless there's sun, rain, and even the wind, because the wind will then help grow its roots. But we have to be willing to ask and know that in the asking, we're aligning in consciousness for that which we are seeking to demonstrate in our lives. And it's not just about the things, the stuff, even though it's the materialistic realm that we seem to live in. It is the way that God shows up as your life. So when we live in answered prayer in joyful anticipation, we're knowing the perfect revelation. Who's ever made plans for a trip and we're extremely excited about it? Anybody? Like you're going to go travel, you're so excited, and then does anybody ever go, oh, I wish I wasn't going? Ever? No. Do you sit at work? Oh, I wish I could just spend 2 more weeks at work. No. You're living in that joyful anticipation, even though you're being present, of the experience you're going to have. Because we don't know till we're present in the moment of what arrives. But the joyful anticipation opens our heart, knowing that we are already watering that seed with gratitude, and we're trusting that there's divine right action in all of that. And in the moment, we know what we know. Even on a trip, you may have an agenda. I want to go see this, I want to go do that, but you actually will not know the experience until you're in the experience. And when you're in the experience, you're flowing in the holy now. That is joyful anticipation. That I'm opening myself to receive that which is of the highest good, knowing that it's perfect, that the power and presence that we call God is revealing exactly what is necessary in the moment. Now, who's ever prayed for something and it didn't first demonstrate the way that you thought? Anybody, or is that just me? All right, good, not just me, awesome. But then you realize, let's first go back, and were you disappointed? A little? Frustrated? Maybe, yeah, having that human experience, like, well, why did that person get the job and not me, right? And then you realize later on, as you move in your life, as that seed starts to grow, it's like, oh, I'm at the perfect place, right here, right now. That wasn't answered prayer because that wasn't the answer to my prayer. Here, right now, is that revelation of my good. Here, right now, is divine flowing perfectly. Oh, and then you kind of feel a little guilty because you're a little snarky, or was that just me? It's like when you didn't get when the relationship didn't happen, or you didn't get the job, or you're disappointed about this, and then you take a couple steps, 2 steps to the left, 10 steps higher, you're like, oh, there was perfect timing. There was a perfect flow. So we want to bear witness when we're having our human experience to that maybe disappointment, but that's when our trust, that's when that joyful anticipation is like, okay, and so the prayer I always say is this or something greater, meaning if it's not this, then show me what is. My unique carnation, experiencing, expressing in this world. And so when we plant that seed, we want to plant that seed in joyful anticipation. 9 months ago, this community planted a seed. 9 months ago. So we're giving birth, right? We're giving birth to a new community as we welcome Reverend David Howard. But think about it. There was a process, right? There's an evolution that happens. That seed does not grow in a day. An idea doesn't form fully in a moment when you may download it. It's a divine timing part that we as humans sometimes have little challenges. I want it, and I want it now, Spirit. And then you're like, oh, yeah, okay, that takes time. So in that time, what have you been doing here as a community? You've been in gratitude for Reverend Karen. And then you're in gratitude. You've been in gratitude. Not knowing, because I didn't know when I was downloading the talk that it was Reverend David Howard, but now that I know, we can celebrate even more. But you were in gratitude for that which was arriving, knowing that that was the answered prayer. It takes expansive awareness to stay in the present moment and trust that Spirit is perfectly providing, that there are steps that need to be taken in the human realm. In the mind of what we call God, it is already so. It's we're in this dense dance of energy that what we call time is just the way that something unfolds, just like the butterfly. That little caterpillar has no idea that it's like eating and it's having a great time. It's like a buffet with the leaves. Little does it know that it's about to turn into a cocoon, and literally its head's going to pop off. And it does. Can you imagine? Who's ever had a situation where you felt like your head was popping off? All right? All right? And you're like, what's this? What is happening? Why now? And then yet, in that deep silence, in that liquidation, in that understanding that there's something greater, an intelligence that's far greater than us, but is our life, then that evolution just naturally happens where that butterfly begins to form. And here's the other thing. You cannot help a butterfly fly. When it's coming out of the cocoon, if you touch it, you actually hurt it. You prohibit it from flying. Just like with the seed, you can plant the seed, but if you keep digging it up, it's not going to grow. So you've been in this little cocoon stage, but with consciousness. Seeding with prayer and gratitude, knowing that there's divine right action, divine timing, Spirit, the spiritual leader that has the values, that has the kindness, that has the joy of being, that has the heart of service, and he is arriving. And that is living an answered prayer with joyful anticipation. Pat, how often do we argue with the process? How often do we want it now and we make a choice and we regret the choice because we were in a hurry? Once again, anybody else but me? Come on, raise your hand so I don't feel so isolated. There you go. We're all having this human experience. And when we can understand that, we can have more compassion and kindness with each other. But living in answered prayer with joyful anticipation, I'm watering that seed. I'm blessing the opportunities. And guess what? Your minister is the vision keeper. But it's the evolution and the emergence of each one of you here, online, and those yet to come, that is the new evolution of this beautiful butterfly that we're going to call Unity on Greenville. And that the minister comes in, and remember, with any kind of joy of being job, it takes about 6 months just to integrate and 2 years really to be in your flow. That's been my experience. And so when we meet in the moment with the new minister and that joyful anticipation, gratitude for the process of trust and prayer, conversation. I don't know, I'm not privy to what happened with the board, I'll be like the little ears, like, was there any arguments? No, human moments, but all that is a part of how things grow, right? Because the little acorn can't stay in its little seed, it has to break open. The little butterfly, first a caterpillar, liquidates, pops its head. Then the butterfly emerges from its cocoon. And it doesn't have to be painful, but what we understand, that in the human level, there is a process. Now, Charles Fillmore says, when we're talking about joyful anticipation with prayer, he says, we increase whatever we praise. The whole creation responds to praise and is God, and is glad, and is God. And then he says, let us all know that just now we are in the very presence of creative mind, the mind that made the universe and everything in it. The mind is here and at work right now as much as it ever was or ever will be. When we fully realize this, we increase the activity of mind in us immeasurably. You must realize that God is spirit, and that spirit is very real and powerful, and by far the most substantial thing in all the world. So, if the mind of God has already, of itself, making it known, whether it's a new minister or a demonstration of a new joy being job, or maybe moving somewhere, that you are aligned in right action, realizing, but spirit, that which is greater, that is my life, I am that involution, evolution, inlet and outlet of the divine, that's what's guiding the process. So that vision is pulling you instead of you pushing an agenda. Anybody else ever push an agenda? I'm having like a confession here of my human experience. So we go through this process, but if we can trust and know that whatever the prayer is, the prayer is the answer is in the prayer, and then with joyful anticipation that we're already in gratitude and praise, we're in that sacred yes, we're in that knowing that something greater is guiding, and we're listening. We're attuning, as subtle as the butterfly that may fly by. Spirit whispering that which is greater. Take a right here, and then you make that right, and you end up meeting the person that takes you to the school, that was me, that was my primary school. Or you listen, hey, make a left, and then you avoid a situation over here in order to be able to express safely there. But we as human beings always feel like we're in control. But when we come from a place of consciousness, we flow. And that's the difference. To live in joyful anticipation is that I am going to know that the divine reality that I call God, whatever way that you name it and claim it, that it knows and I know by allowing the flow. That's why we meditate, so we can listen. That's why we pray, so we can plant those seeds, and then we water those seeds with gratitude. That's why we come together in celebration and community, so we can amplify that love. And then when you're having a very human moment, you have a safe place to come. I remember when my former community, when I first found that community, I was so excited every Sunday to drive there. I had my little Nissan Sentra, and I couldn't take the highways, I'd take the long way, and I had that joyful anticipation, not knowing what I was going to hear, who I was going to meet, what I was going to learn. But my commitment to that sacred yes of evolution, to growing deeper, to expanding my awareness, to not knowing how it was going to show up or who I was going to be, that joyful anticipation got me through the long drives, because sometimes it was a little tiring. I was at the end of a long-term illness, for those who don't know me. So I was at the end of a 10-year illness with chronic fatigue syndrome and got in my little car because I knew this was the place. And this is how Spirit validated for me. Took the long drive. I'm sitting there in a parking lot. I'm nervous. I had moved from Los Angeles where, I'd been a part of a spiritual community, working in the film industry. I'd been sick for 10 years. And then I had that, it was like that butterfly. It's like, I am ready to go. I make that drive. It was Center for Spiritual Living Dallas at the old space. And I'm sitting in the parking lot and I am nervous. I'm like, is this the right thing to do? And all of a sudden these white petals come cascading down on my windshield. And I took a breath. I'm like, yes. And then I stepped out of the car, not knowing a soul. I entered the space. I remember walking left, where Sandra Francis greeted me, who later became one of my prayer partners. I met a friend, Lisa Blackford. Didn't know who any of these people were, who later became someone that helped she and I, with hundreds of others, build the new space. See, I didn't know what was going to unfold. I just knew that was my next step. And I trusted and I listened, even though my body was still a little tired, even though I knew it was just a long journey, but something was pulling me to that which is greater, and I listened. And so when we live in joyful anticipation, we have to know that there is indeed that divine timing, that we are living in that answered prayer, that the new creation, the new community that we are creating begins with each one of you. Each one of you. And then imagining those who are going to walk in because they feel the beautiful music, they feel the love, they feel the vibration, and we are not perfect. Let's be really clear, right? Anybody want to raise your hand, especially anybody on the board? Because, the board has to make a lot of decisions, and sometimes people don't like those decisions. We are spirit in this human realm, but when we can come from the consciousness that there is something greater guiding us, then if I have a human moment, then I can allow myself to express myself in a clear way. So then I can, whether I need to ask for forgiveness or reframe what I'm saying, but I have to know that in this sacred space where we all belong and we operate from that joyful anticipation, that we can grow together something beyond we can even imagine. Because my first day at the center, that was 2003, I couldn't have imagined, one, the community that I met that grew, the people that became my friends, the invitation into service, because literally Susan Pankey invited me, because believe it or not, I am very shy. People don't believe that. I'm going to do like a YouTube with my mother with her Italian accent. Yes, Veronica was very shy as a child. Very shy. I'm really actually introverted. But when I get around people that I love and adore, I express in an extroverted way. But it was just like this shy little kid not knowing what was going to unfold, who I was going to meet. And every week something opened within me. And Susan Pankey invited me, because I sat in the back, like I was saying, I was quiet and shy. And she's like, hey, do you want to be a part of the recycling team? Yes, easy, not big commitment. And from there, that began me being more involved in community and meeting people and listening and questioning and going deeper. But there was that joy within me that I found my home. I found my sacred space. And then, of course, the invitation then was eventually to get into ministry, and then in ministry, create my own focus ministry, guided all the way by Spirit, having no idea that I would be teaching mindfulness to children. So when we live in answered prayer, we have to trust that we are just moving those next 5 yards. So a new unity on Greenville, even though you're all still here, is emerging with joyful anticipation. Reverend David is emerging. Whoever walks through those doors because they feel the amplification of love, something new is emerging. And when we can be in that sacred yes, in that joyful anticipation, because what we do is for us to love, to connect, to grow, to deepen, to support when things are not going well, because we don't do the metaphysical bypass. We have our human experiences, but then we get to hold each other in that truth. When someone is having a difficult experience, we get to know that truth without judgment. But something new, something good, something is evolving here. This is a new absolute chapter of unity on Greenville, and we get to be in gratitude for Reverend Doug, gratitude for those who continue to watch us come on in, and gratitude for all of you here. Because each one of you is an essential part of this vision. And with joyful anticipation, I'm coming to that potluck, by the way. My mama can bake. I call her Mama Mia. I'm like, hey, Ma, you got a cheesecake in there somewhere? She'll make something. But we come in that joyful celebration first of gratitude for each other, for being here, for trusting, even when it was difficult, even when there was sadness of letting go. And then look what's emerging. We bless every step of the way because we spiral higher and higher. It's part of our evolution. And then we thank with all of our heart and our soul for Reverend Doug and for all the support that you received. And then we welcome Reverend David. But I'm inviting you to welcome the new you that's also emerging. The joyful anticipation of what is arriving. The listening of when to say yes and when to say no thank you. You'll know when yes and no thank you. But to understand that prayer and living in answered prayer and watering the seeds with joyful anticipation, we may not see the full oak tree grow into its brilliance, but in every moment we get to be a part of taking care of it, of loving it, allowing it to emerge. I am so blessed by your presence. This is an exquisite community. It is, for me, such an honor and privilege since January to be able to come in when I come in to support you, not only in prayer, but to lift you in that joy and that excitement. Let me, my life, be an embodiment and a mirror to you that when someone says that's not possible, they told me at 30 I would never get well. Well, here I am. Here I am. And I allow that divine energy to circulate as my being. And I take naps. I like naps when I can. Or, mindful of my time. But here in this joyful anticipation of what is arriving, the building may look the same right now. People say, well, Unity of Greenville has always been there. But yeah, but we are evolving and emerging and spiraling up in joyful anticipation of good and more good. And we're inviting each one of you to bring your gifts because you're necessary. And if you just come once and leave, take the energy with you. But know that you have a sacred space that you can call home here, whether you come and come back later or you just come for the potluck. I try not, because I usually speak, in different places, but I'm making that potluck. I'm putting it on my calendar, But that joyful anticipation is that remembrance, the seed is planted. Everything that is within that seed is the divine intelligence that I call God, but it must work in harmony with all the elements. Prayer. There is divine timing. There's perfect flow. There's an energy that flows. Like I said, they told me I'd never be well. It took 10 years, but every single moment of those 10 years brought me to my nieces and nephews, brought me to the deeper part of myself, brought me to my community, and now that I'm all the way over here, I can say, yeah, that was perfect. May not have felt perfect at times. And then we understand. When we pray and live in joyful anticipation, we're like, yes, we're in the sacred yes. We open ourselves up to yes, so we can move any obstacles from our mind or want it to be this way like it was in the past. No, something new, something good, something magnificent is happening in this moment. And stand in that sacred yes. So if you're willing, before we wrap it up in prayer, if you're willing to stand in the sacred yes, I would invite you to stand, and we're going to say yes 3 times, all right? You're willing to stand if you're capable, all right? And when I say yes, just breathe into this that we are saying yes to answered prayer in our personal life and yes to answered prayer for Unity of Greenville. So are you willing? Yes. A little louder. Are you willing? Yes. Are you willing? Yes. Now take a look around the room and just look at each other and say, are you willing? Are you willing? Yes. All right. It's in this sacred yes. Have a seat. Let's pray out. But it's this sacred yes. It's this joyful anticipation. In the law of vibration of the universe, energy matches energy. I'm not saying you have to always be like this. I'm not always like this because I'd be a little light bulb that would just like burn out. I'm very quiet. I recharge. But when you have that prayer, when you plant that seed, you stand in that sacred yes and the excitement and joyful anticipation, just like when my nieces and nephews were being born. I didn't know who was arriving, and I fell in love time and time again. So let's fall in love with this sacred yes. Let's welcome Reverend David when he arrives. Let's thank Reverend Doug for being here. Let's thank each other for holding down the fort, especially through a pandemic. And in that sacred yes, I'm going to claim right now in prayer all the good for Unity of Greenville, because you are a magnificent community that I am grateful is still here. I drove by yesterday with my mother and my sister. I go, there's Unity on Greenville. I get to be there tomorrow. And just grateful that you, in this sacred space, will be the place that that one person, like me, sitting in the back is what I did for 9 months, found a home, found a way to heal, and emerged into something that was beyond my imagination. So close your eyes. If you're willing, take a breath, and let us just breathe in together this sacred and holy yes. This absolute knowingness of the one power and the one presence that we call God. That infinite light, that infinite love that makes itself known in, through, and as all of creation. God is all that there is. All that there is. All the love, all the joy, all the wisdom, all the peace, all the harmony, all the clarity, all of this is the way that Spirit reveals itself. And that each person here is a absolute, exquisite, perfect manifestation and demonstration and life of the Holy One. So I speak my word in gratitude and that joyful anticipation of the answered prayer that has arrived and continues to arrive. Gratitude for this community, gratitude for all who came before us, gratitude for all who are here, and gratitude for all who are yet to come. And to know that that joyful anticipation waters the seed of sacred community, the seed of growing consciously, the seed of having people and love to be there during the difficult moments, that we know that love is far greater than anything that maybe the world is showing us right now. But here at Unity on Greenville, this is where God makes itself known in the magnificence of each person here. And I know for Reverend David, just all that needs to get done, that he arrives in divine timing and the perfect expression that is his light. And I thank Reverend Doug for his just consciousness and kindness and for just lifting this space, guiding this process. And in this new birth of Unity on Greenville, let us celebrate in the sacred yes, that knowing that indeed this day and every day is a day that God has made, and that each person here gets to bring forth their light, bring forth their joy, bring forth their love, talent, and time, and whatever's necessary, and that together, together, we make such a beautiful community. I just know that divine mind reveals itself perfectly in every single moment, step by step, breath by breath, knowing that indeed it is divinely guided, loved, lifted, and supported. Let us breathe in this sacred yes, breathing in. And that exhale, letting that joy radiate as our beingness, and just that anticipation for all that arrives, and in deep, deep love. I know that this is so. I continue to know and bless Unity on Greenville, and I am grateful to be able to be present to the light that is this beautiful community. And one more deep breath. And as we exhale and let go and let God in gratitude, just releasing into that universal law, that aspect of God that simply says, yes, dear, it is here. We know that it is already so. And let us affirm it together by saying, and so it is.